Photography as we know it today began in the late 1830s in France when Joseph Nicephore Niepce used a portable camera obscura to expose a pewter plate coated with bitumen to light. This is the first recorded image that did not fade quickly. Niepce's success led to a number of other experiments, and photography progressed rapidly. Daguerreotypes, emulsion plates, and wet plates were developed almost simultaneously in the mid to late 1800s. This image of Niagara Falls is a daguerreotype and is the earliest known photograph taken in Canada in 1840. Daguerreotypes were an early form of photographs that involved a copper plate coated with silver and exposed to iodine vapor before it was exposed to light. To create the image on the plate, the early daguerreotypes had to be exposed to light for up to 15 minutes. Once the photograph was developed, they were often placed in a small hinged case of wood and covered with either leather or paper, and would have a brass preserver. When produced, a daguerreotype appears to be on a mirror, and when viewed at an angle, the dark areas appear silver. This type of photograph was popular until the late 1850s when it was replaced by emulsion plates. Emulsion plates or wet plates were less expensive than daguerreotypes and required only 2 or 3 seconds of exposure time. This made them much more suited to portrait photographs, which was the most common use of photography at the time. Two common types of emulsion plates were the ambrotype and the tin type. Ambrotypes used a glass plate instead of the copper plate of the daguerreotypes, though they were also often placed in a case once they were developed. Ambrotypes were backed with a dark substance such as varnish or paper. When the backing starts to deteriorate on an ambrotype, you can often see through the glass. This type of photograph was popular until the 1860s when tin types and card-mounted paper prints replaced it. Tin types used a tin plate and do not appear reflective when viewed. These plates were much more sensitive to light, and they had to be developed quickly. Photographers needed to have chemistry on hand and had studio spaces where portraits were taken or would travel in wagons that doubled as a darkroom. By the end of the 19th century, carte de visite and cabinet cards became quite popular. These were card-mounted photographs that often included decorative borders and designs. In addition, the photographer's stamp was printed below the printed image or on the back. Early photographs were black and white, though sometimes photographers would add color with paint once the photo was developed. This is often seen with early postcards. In the 1880s, George Eastman started a company called Kodak, which expanded photography to the masses. Eastman created a flexible roll film that did not require constantly changing the solid plates. This allowed him to develop a self-contained box camera that held 100 film exposures. The camera had a small single lens with no focusing adjustment. The consumer would take pictures and send the camera back to the factory for the film to be developed and prints made, much like modern disposable cameras. This was the first camera inexpensive enough for the average person to afford. In the early part of the 20th century, film was still large in comparison to today's 35mm film. It was not until the late 1940s that 35mm film became cheap enough for the majority of consumers to use. It is also around this time that color photographs were introduced. By the 1960s, color photography would become the norm with the public as color film became more easily accessible. At the same time that 35mm cameras were becoming popular, Polaroid introduced the Model 95. Model 95 used a secret chemical process to develop film inside the camera in less than a minute. This new camera was fairly expensive, but the novelty of instant images caught the public's attention. By the mid-1960s, Polaroid had many models on the market, and the price had dropped so that even more people could afford it. Today, most people use their cell phone or digital camera to take photographs that are often stored on computers or in the cloud.
A great place to start when you are dating a photo is to examine the photo visually and look for certain clues. One important clue can be found on studio portraits. Photographers often left a stamp on the photo mat of studio portraits. Once you find out the name of the studio or photographer who took the photo, you can refer to an Ontario photographer's guide to find the dates when the studio or photographer was active. This provides a good indication of the date range for when a photo was taken. When dating a postcard, look for when the postcard was stamped. This can also provide you with an approximate date for when the postcard was published. Another physical clue in a photograph is its color. Is it black and white, sepia-toned, or in color? It wasn't until the 1960s that color photography was commonly used. Next, study the subject matter of the photograph itself. The people, objects, and the location the photo was taken at. Look at what people are wearing. Often, fashion styles and trends provide a good indication of the time period a photo was taken in. Note the length of women's skirts. Is the skirt worn well above the ankle, mid-calf, or just below the knee? Then it's likely the photo was taken in the 1920s or later. The width of men's ties or the style of hat men are wearing also provide clues. Other accessories that may provide insight into the date of a photo include eyeglasses and gloves. Take note if the woman in the photo are wearing makeup, and examine their hairstyles and men's facial hair. The Oxford County Archives has an online exhibit about the history of facial hair, with a gallery of Oxford County wardens wearing facial hairstyles throughout history. To view the exhibit, visit our website at oxfordcounty.ca/archives. Once you have an idea of what the people in the photos look like and what they are wearing, you can reference resources on fashion history online or in books available at your local library or archives. Sometimes you might be lucky and notice a business name on a sports team jersey in a photo or something similar. City directories are helpful to determine the dates during which a business was operating. When looking at photographs featuring streets or buildings, there are a few other clues you can look for. For example, look for the names of businesses on signs. The dates of when businesses were in operation will give you an idea of when a photo was taken. The styles of vehicles is also an indicator of a period of history. Automobiles from the earlier part of the 20th century look very different from cars, trucks, and vans used in the latter part of the century. Early automobiles almost looked carriage-like. Using some resources online and referring to pictures of vehicles from different time periods can also help you date a photo. Also, look for signs of electricity. Are there hydro wires in the photo? It is unlikely that photographs taken pre-early 1900s would have visible hydro lines.
When handling your photographs and negatives, make sure your hands are clean. Dirt, lotion, and even the oils from our skin can transfer to images and leave a lasting stain. It is important too that when handling such images that we avoid eating or drinking. It may sound silly, but a spill can cause long-term damage, and photographs can't be cleaned and repaired as easily as other paper-based records. Photographs and negatives are like people and prefer to be stored in areas that are not too hot and dry or too cold and damp. Avoid storing photographs and albums in attics, basements, and garages where the temperature may fluctuate. Photographs and albums should be stored at about 20 degrees Celsius, while negatives should ideally be stored at lower temperatures. Remember to not store photographs and negatives together. If something was to happen to one, you at least have the other stored somewhere else. Fold lines and creases can damage the surface of a photograph and can lead to rips and tears. When choosing an album, make sure it is acid-free and that the binding allows the page to lie flat and to keep photographs from bending and cracking. Acid-free photo corners or plastic sleeves should be used as well. Magnetic albums that were popular in the 1960s through the 1990s should not be used to store photographs or other archival materials. The adhesive used on the pages and the plastic protective cover pages are acidic and can cause photographs to yellow over time. If possible, remove images and store them using acid-free envelopes, boxes, and/or albums. If photographs cannot be safely removed from a magnetic album, consider scanning the photograph and having a digital copy. When framing a photograph, again ensure that the materials used are acid-free. It is important to also use a mat to ensure that there is space between the photograph and the glass to avoid the possibility of the photograph adhering. When choosing a spot to display your photographs, make sure to avoid an area that has direct sunlight and direct heat. Both can cause the photograph to fade or yellow over time. If you have concerns, consider displaying a copy of a photograph rather than the original. Finally, as technology continues to develop, it is important to remember to migrate digital photographs as newer formats become available. It is also important to back up digital photographs on, say, an external hard drive or the cloud, and whenever possible, print the photographs that are most important to you.